everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. I'm Anna, and today we're diving into something that most of us experience but rarely stop to think about deeply: the metro. Whether you ride it every day or only occasionally while traveling, the metro has its own rhythm, stories, and little moments that make it more than just transportation. I've always found it fascinating how a simple train ride can connect so many lives and places at once. So today, we're going to explore that together, from funny observations to meaningful reflections, and maybe even a few unexpected insights along the way.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark, and I'm really excited about today's topic because the metro is one of those everyday things that quietly shapes how cities feel and function. I mean, think about it. It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about the people you see, the atmosphere, and even the sounds that become part of your routine. I've had some pretty memorable moments underground, both amusing and surprisingly thoughtful. So in this episode, Anna and I will chat about our experiences, the culture of metro systems, and why they're more interesting than we usually give them credit for.
I totally agree, and I think one of the coolest things about metros is how universal they are, yet each city's system feels completely unique. The metro in one city might feel calm and quiet, while in another it's loud, busy, and full of energy. Even the design of the stations can tell you something about the culture of the place. I've always loved observing those little differences, especially when I travel. It's like stepping into a moving snapshot of the city. Today, I'm hoping we can unpack those details and maybe get listeners to see their daily commute in a new light.
That's such a good point, and it reminds me of how the metro can almost feel like a living organism, constantly moving and adapting. During rush hour, it's packed and intense, but late at night, it can feel quiet and almost reflective. I've had moments where I just sat there watching people, wondering about their stories, where they're going, and what their day has been like. It's kind of amazing how a shared space can feel both crowded and personal at the same time. I think that duality is part of what makes the metro so interesting to talk about.
Yes, and I also think there's something comforting about the predictability of it. The schedules, the announcements, the familiar routes, it creates a sense of structure in what can otherwise be a chaotic day. At the same time, though, there are always little surprises, like a street musician performing on the platform, or an unexpected delay that turns into a shared moment of patience among strangers. Those small experiences can really stick with you. I know I've had days where a simple metro ride somehow shifted my mood, either for better or worse.
Absolutely. And I think those shared experiences are what makes the metro such a powerful part of urban life. Even if people don't talk to each other, there's this unspoken understanding among passengers. Everyone is navigating the same system, dealing with the same delays, or enjoying the same smooth ride. It creates a kind of silent community, if that makes sense. And then, of course, there are the moments when that silence breaks, like when someone needs help or when something unexpected happens. Those are the times when you really see the human side of it all.
I love that idea of a silent community because it really captures the feeling of being surrounded by people, yet still in your own world. I often find myself just observing, noticing small details like how people choose their seats or how they react to announcements. It's almost like a social experiment that's constantly happening around you. And sometimes you catch these brief, meaningful interactions, like someone offering their seat or helping with directions, that remind you how kind people can be, even in a busy, fast-paced environment like the metro.
That's true. And I think those little acts of kindness stand out even more because they happen in such a transient space. People are coming and going, often in a hurry, yet they still take a moment to help someone else. It's a reminder that even in a crowded city, there's room for connection. On the flip side, there are also those awkward or funny moments that everyone can relate to, like missing your stop because you were distracted or accidentally making eye contact and not knowing what to do next. Those experiences make the metro feel very human.
Definitely, and I think that's part of why the metro is such a great topic for a conversation like this. It's something almost everyone can relate to, but at the same time, everyone has their own unique perspective on it. Some people see it as just a necessity, while others, like us, might see it as a place full of stories and observations. I'm really curious to hear your specific experiences, Mark, because I know you've spent a lot of time commuting, and I'm sure you've noticed things that I haven't.
Oh, I've definitely got a few stories to share. Some of them pretty amusing and others a bit more reflective. Commuting regularly really changes how you see the metro. It becomes part of your daily rhythm, almost like a background soundtrack to your life. You start recognizing patterns, familiar faces, even certain habits of the system itself. And over time, you develop your own little routines and preferences, like where to stand on the platform or which carriage to get into. It's those small details that make the experience feel personal, even though it's shared by so many people.
That's so true, and I think listeners will really connect with that idea of personal routines within a shared space. It's funny how something as simple as choosing where to stand can feel so important when you're trying to make your commute smoother. I've even noticed that people tend to develop almost instinctive behaviors, like moving in sync with the crowd or anticipating when the doors will open. It's like everyone is part of this unspoken choreography, and once you're used to it, you just flow along naturally without even thinking about it.
I love that description of it as choreography because it really does feel like that sometimes. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of organized chaos that somehow works most of the time. And when it doesn't, that's when things get interesting. Delays, crowded trains, unexpected changes, they can disrupt that rhythm, but they also create new moments and stories. I think that's what makes the metro such a rich topic to explore. So, in today's episode, we'll dive deeper into all of this, from routines and observations to the unexpected moments that make metro rides so unique.
Exactly, and I'm really looking forward to getting into those details. We've set the stage a bit by talking about the overall experience, but there's so much more to unpack, from the design of stations to the behavior of passengers, and even the emotions tied to commuting. There's a lot to explore. So if you're listening right now, maybe think about your own metro experiences as we go along. You might start noticing things you've never paid attention to before, and that's always a fun shift in perspective.
That's a great way to put it, and I think it's the perfect place to transition into the main part of our conversation. We've talked about why the metro is interesting, but now it's time to get into the specifics and really break it down. So stick with us as we move into part one, where we'll start exploring our personal experiences and the little details that make metro rides so unique.
So let's start with something simple, Mark. Your daily metro routine. I feel like everyone who uses the metro regularly develops their own habits without even realizing it. For me, it's all about timing and positioning. I know exactly which part of the platform to stand on so I can be near the exit when I arrive, and I even try to catch the same train every morning. It's not something I consciously planned, but over time it just became automatic. Do you have something like that, or are you more of a go-with-the-flow kind of commuter?
Oh no, I'm definitely a routine person when it comes to the metro. I've practically optimized my entire commute at this point. I know which carriage tends to be less crowded, which doors line up closest to the stairs at my stop, and even which time window gives me the best chance of getting a seat. It sounds a bit obsessive when I say it out loud, but it really makes a difference during busy mornings. And when something disrupts that routine, like a delay or a sudden crowd, it throws me off more than I'd like to admit.
That's actually really relatable, and I think a lot of people will understand that feeling. It's interesting how such a public, shared space can still feel so personal because of those little routines. I also find that my mood can depend on how smoothly my metro ride goes. If everything is on time and not too crowded, I arrive feeling calm and ready for the day. But if it's chaotic, it kind of lingers with me. It's almost like the metro sets the tone for everything that comes after.
That's a great point, and I've noticed the same thing. A smooth ride can feel almost meditative, especially if you have a moment to just sit and listen to music or zone out. On the other hand, a stressful commute can put you on edge before your day even starts. I think that's why people become so attached to their routines. It's a way of creating a bit of control in an otherwise unpredictable environment. Even small things like standing in a certain spot can make the experience feel more manageable.
Yes, and speaking of unpredictability, I think one of the most interesting parts of taking the metro is the people you encounter. Even if you don't interact with them, you still notice them. There's such a variety: students, office workers, tourists, families, and each person is on their own journey. Sometimes I find myself imagining their stories, like where they're going or what kind of day they're about to have. It makes the whole experience a bit more alive and less mechanical.
I do that too, probably more than I should. It's like people watching becomes part of the commute. You start recognizing certain types as well. The person who's always in a rush, the one who looks half asleep, or the one who seems completely absorbed in a book. And occasionally you notice the same individuals over time, even if you never speak to them. It creates this strange sense of familiarity, like you're part of each other's routines without actually knowing anything about one another.
That sense of familiarity is so interesting because it's almost like a silent connection. You don't talk, you don't even acknowledge each other most of the time, but you recognize faces and patterns. I once noticed a woman who always boarded at the same station as me, and even though we never interacted, it felt odd when I didn't see her one day. It's such a subtle thing, but it shows how the metro can create these quiet, almost invisible relationships between strangers.
That's a perfect example, and I think it highlights how the metro isn't just about movement, it's also about shared experience. Even without direct interaction, people influence each other's journeys in small ways. And then there are those moments when the barrier breaks, like when someone asks for directions or there's a brief exchange of words. Those interactions are usually short, but they can be surprisingly meaningful, especially in a space where most people keep to themselves.
I agree, and I think those brief interactions can really stand out because they're so unexpected. Most of the time, everyone is focused on their own world, so when someone reaches out, it feels different. I remember once helping a tourist figure out which line to take, and even though it was a simple conversation, it made my day feel a bit brighter. It's funny how something as small can have that kind of impact, especially in a setting that often feels impersonal.
That's true, and I think it speaks to the balance between anonymity and connection on the metro. You can choose to stay completely in your own bubble, or you can engage, even if it's just for a moment. And sometimes those moments happen naturally, like when there's a shared reaction to something unusual. I've seen people exchange smiles or even laugh together over a small incident, and it creates this brief sense of community before everyone goes back to their own space.
Yes, and those shared reactions are some of my favorite moments. They remind you that even though everyone is focused on their own lives, there's still a collective experience happening. Whether it's a delay, a funny announcement, or something unexpected, people respond together, even if it's just with a glance or a smile. It's subtle, but it adds a layer of humanity to the whole experience that you might not notice at first.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes the metro more than just a functional system. It's a place where routines, observations, and small interactions come together to create something richer. Even though most rides are uneventful, those little details and moments build up over time and shape how we feel about the experience. And for people who commute regularly, it becomes a significant part of their daily lives, whether they realize it or not.
That's such a great way to sum it up. And I think it naturally leads us into the next part of our conversation. We've talked about routines and the people we encounter, but there's also the environment itself, the design, the sounds, and the overall atmosphere of the metro. That's something I find really fascinating, especially when comparing different cities. So in part 2, let's explore how the physical and sensory aspects of the metro shape our experiences even further.
I like that direction a lot because the environment plays such a huge role in how we perceive the metro. It's not just about the people or the routine, but also about the space we're in and how it feels. From lighting and architecture to the sounds of trains and announcements, all of these elements come together to create a distinct atmosphere. So yeah, let's dive into that next and see how those details influence the overall experience of riding the metro.
So let's dive into the environment itself, because I think this is where metros really start to feel different from one city to another. The design of stations, for example, can completely change your experience. Some are bright, modern, and almost artistic, while others feel older, more functional, maybe even a bit worn down. I personally love stations that have unique architecture or little design details because it makes the commute feel less repetitive. It's like each stop has its own personality, and that adds a layer of interest to what might otherwise feel like a routine journey.
I completely agree, and I think architecture plays a bigger role than we usually notice. When a station is well designed, with good lighting and clear signage, it just feels easier to move through, and that reduces stress a lot. On the other hand, if a station is dark or confusing, it can make even a short transfer feel frustrating. I've also noticed that some cities treat their metro stations almost like public art spaces with murals or installations. That kind of effort really stands out and can make the whole system feel more welcoming and thoughtful.
Yes, and I think those artistic touches can really change your mood, especially during a long day. Even something as simple as a colorful wall or an interesting pattern can make you pause for a second and appreciate your surroundings. It breaks that sense of monotony that can come with daily commuting. I remember visiting a station once that had music playing softly in the background, and it completely transformed the atmosphere. It felt calmer, almost like the space was designed to help people relax instead of just move quickly from one place to another.
That's a great example, and it connects nicely to another important element, the sounds of the metro. Every system has its own soundscape, from the hum of the trains to the announcements and even the footsteps on the platform. Some sounds become so familiar that you stop noticing them, but they still shape your experience. Personally, I find the rhythm of the train moving along the tracks strangely comforting. It's repetitive, almost like white noise, and it can make the ride feel more relaxing, especially if you're used to it.
I know exactly what you mean, and I think those sounds become part of your daily rhythm without you even realizing it. The announcement chimes, the doors opening and closing, even the slight echo in underground stations, they all blend together into a kind of background soundtrack. But sometimes those sounds can also be a bit overwhelming, especially during rush hour when everything is louder and more chaotic. It's interesting how the same environment can feel calming at one time and stressful at another, depending on the situation.
That contrast is really important, and it shows how dynamic the metro environment can be. During quieter times, you might notice details like the design or the sounds in a more positive way, but during peak hours, the focus shifts to just getting through the crowd and reaching your destination. Lighting also plays a role here, I think. Bright, well-lit spaces tend to feel safer and more comfortable, while dim lighting can make a station feel less inviting. These factors might seem small, but together they have a big impact on how people feel.
Absolutely, and I think safety and comfort are closely tied to those design choices. When a station feels open and well maintained, it naturally puts you at ease. But if it's crowded, poorly lit, or confusing to navigate, it can create a sense of tension. I've noticed that in some metros, there are clear signs and maps everywhere, which makes it easier for both locals and tourists. That kind of thoughtful design really improves the experience, especially for people who might not be familiar with the system.
That's true, and navigation is such a key part of the experience. A well-organized metro system can make a huge city feel more accessible, while a confusing one can make even short trips feel complicated. I think this is especially important for visitors who rely on clear information to get around. When everything's intuitive, it builds confidence, and people are more likely to explore. In that sense, the metro isn't just transportation, it's also a gateway to the city itself.
I love that idea of the metro as a gateway because it really is the first impression many people have of a city. The cleanliness, the design, the overall atmosphere, it all sends a message about the place you're in. Even small details like how well the system is maintained or how friendly the announcements sound can influence your perception. It's fascinating how something so practical can also carry so much cultural meaning and identity.
Exactly. And I think that cultural aspect is often overlooked. Different cities have different approaches to their metro systems, and that reflects broader values and priorities. Some focus on efficiency and speed, while others emphasize comfort or aesthetics. Even the behavior of passengers can vary depending on the culture, which adds another layer to the environment. All of these elements come together to create a unique experience that goes beyond just getting from one place to another.
Yes, and when you start paying attention to those details, the metro becomes much more interesting. It's not just a background part of your day anymore, it's something you can actively observe and appreciate. I think that's one of the things we're trying to highlight in this conversation, that even everyday experiences can have depth if you look closely enough. And the metro is a perfect example of that because it combines design, sound, movement, and human behavior all in one place.
I couldn't agree more, and I think this naturally leads us into the next part of our discussion. We've talked about routines, people, and the environment, but there's also the emotional side of the metro, the feelings it brings out, from stress to comfort to even inspiration. Those emotional experiences can be just as important as the physical ones, and they often stay with us longer.
So, in part 3, let's explore that side of things and see how the metro connects to our inner experiences.
That sounds like a great direction to take, because I think emotions are really at the heart of how we remember our experiences. A metro ride might be short, but it can still leave a strong impression depending on how it made you feel. So let's get into that next and talk about the emotional and psychological side of commuting and how something so ordinary can sometimes feel surprisingly meaningful.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to that part because it's something we all experience but don't always put into words. The metro can be stressful, calming, inspiring, or even nostalgic, depending on the moment. So yeah, let's dive into part 3 and explore those emotional layers a bit more deeply.
So now we're getting into what might be the most personal part of all, the emotional side of riding the metro. For me, it really depends on the day. Sometimes it feels like a peaceful pause, a moment where I can just sit, listen to music, and be in my own thoughts. Other times, especially when it's crowded or I'm running late, it becomes stressful and overwhelming. It's interesting how the same space can trigger completely different emotions depending on your mindset and what's happening around you. I think that emotional flexibility is what makes the metro such a unique everyday experience.
I feel that too. And I think the metro often reflects whatever mood you bring into it. If you're calm, it can feel almost relaxing, like a break between parts of your day. But if you're already stressed, every little thing, delays, noise, crowds, can feel amplified. I've also noticed that certain moments on the metro can feel unexpectedly meaningful, like when you're thinking about something important or just watching the world go by through the window. It creates this space where you're physically moving but mentally paused, which is kind of a rare combination.
As we wrap up today's episode, I keep thinking about how something as ordinary as the metro can actually hold so much depth. At the start, it might just seem like a daily routine or a simple way to get around. But when you really pay attention, it becomes so much more. It's a place filled with quiet moments, shared experiences, and even emotional transitions. I think what I'll take away from this conversation is the idea that even the most familiar parts of our lives can feel new again if we look at them differently.
I feel the same way. And I think that's one of the most valuable things about conversations like this. They remind us to slow down and notice the details we usually overlook. The metro isn't just about transportation, it's about people, design, sound, and emotion all coming together in one space. And even though each ride might seem similar, no two experiences are exactly the same. That's what makes it interesting. It's constantly changing, even if we don't always realize it in the moment.
Exactly. And I think there's something really comforting about that idea. The metro can be predictable in structure, but unpredictable in experience. And that balance makes it feel alive. Whether it's a peaceful ride where you get lost in your thoughts or a chaotic one that tests your patience, each moment adds something to your day. I like the idea of embracing those moments instead of just rushing through them, even if it's just by noticing something small or appreciating a brief interaction.
That's a great way to look at it. And I think it can actually change how we approach our daily routines. If we start seeing the metro as more than just a means to an end, it can become a space for reflection, observation, or even a bit of creativity. I've had ideas come to me while sitting on a train or found myself thinking in ways I normally wouldn't. It's almost like the environment creates a different kind of mental space, which can be surprisingly valuable.
I love that because it shows how the metro can even become a source of inspiration. It might not be obvious at first, but when you think about it, you're surrounded by movement, people, and constant change. That combination can spark new thoughts or perspectives. And even if you're not actively looking for inspiration, it can still happen naturally. Sometimes just being in a different environment, even temporarily, is enough to shift your mindset in a positive way.
Definitely. And I think that ties back to everything we've talked about today. The routines, the people, the environment, and the emotions. They all come together to create an experience that's much richer than it seems on the surface. And the best part is, it's something most of us already have access to in our daily lives. We don't need to go anywhere special to notice these things. We just need to pay a bit more attention.
That's such a good point, and I hope our listeners take that with them. The next time you're on the metro, maybe you'll notice the rhythm of the train, the design of the station, or even the expressions of the people around you. You might find something interesting or meaningful in a place you've seen countless times before. And even if it's just a small shift in perspective, that can make your day feel a little different.
I think that's a perfect takeaway. It's not about turning every commute into something profound, but about being open to the possibility that it can be more than just routine. Even small moments of awareness can make a difference. And who knows, you might even start to enjoy parts of the experience you used to ignore or dislike. It's all about perspective and how we choose to engage with the world around us.
Well said, Mark. And with that, I think it's time for us to wrap up this episode. Thank you all so much for listening and spending this time with us. We hope this conversation gave you something to think about and maybe even a new way to see your everyday experiences. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to tune in next time for more discussions like this.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. It's been a really enjoyable conversation. We always appreciate you taking the time to listen, and we hope you found it as interesting as we did. Until next time, take care, enjoy your journeys, whether they're on the metro or elsewhere, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Take care, everyone, and remember to look a little closer at the world around you. You never know what you might discover in the most unexpected places. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye, everyone, and thanks again for listening.